Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on an industry that is, quite literally, the backbone of our modern economy: industrial real estate. It's this hidden world of warehouses and factories that makes almost everything in our daily lives possible. So let's dive right in.
I mean, really think about it for a second. You click Buy Now on your phone, and a day or two later, a package just appears on your doorstep. But what happens in between? What's going on in that mysterious gap? Well, the answer lies in this huge network of buildings that we're going to explore right now.
All right, so first things first, let's get a handle on the big picture. What exactly is the industrial market? This is the foundation for everything else we're about to cover.
At its very core, this is what we're talking about. But here's the crucial part to understand. This market is completely demand-driven. The need for all this space, for warehouses, for factories, for all of it, is a direct result of our demand for products. Put it this way, the more stuff we all buy, the more industrial space is needed. It's that simple.
And when we say industrial, I mean the term is huge. It covers so much ground. It's not just one thing. It's everything from a company assembling the phone in your pocket to a distillery making your favorite drink, all the way to those massive distribution centers that hold it all. The variety is just enormous.
Okay, so to make sense of that huge variety, the industry basically splits things into two main categories. This is a really fundamental distinction you gotta know: the difference between light and heavy industry.
And yeah, the difference is pretty night and day. On one side, you've got light industry, think smaller scale, less intense stuff. And on the other side, you've got heavy industry. We're talking large scale, super intensive operations, often with a much bigger environmental footprint.
So what does light industry actually look like in the real world? Well, it could be your local auto repair shop, or a lab developing new medicines, or even the data centers that are basically powering our digital lives. They're totally essential, but they're usually not as disruptive to the areas around them. And then you have heavy industry. Now we're talking about a whole different beast. These are massive operations like oil refineries, factories that build giant bulldozers, or facilities that store huge amounts of chemicals. The scale and the intensity here are just on another level entirely.
Okay, so we know there's light and heavy industry. But beyond that, the buildings themselves get sorted into categories based on how flexible they are. Not all industrial buildings are created equal. First up, you've got the general use building. Honestly, the best way to think about this is like the plain white t-shirt of industrial real estate. It's simple, it's super adaptable, and it has the widest appeal, because almost any business can find a way to use it. That flexibility makes it a really popular and pretty safe investment. Next, we've got the special use building. This one is more like a hiking boot. It's designed for a more specific purpose, like a huge distribution center that needs 50 loading docks. But that purpose is still pretty common. So it's more specialized, but still useful for a whole bunch of similar businesses.
And finally, at the most extreme end, you get the single-use building. This is the scuba flipper of real estate. It is perfectly designed for one and only one very specific job, like an oil refinery. And because of that, it's practically useless for anything else without a massive, and I mean massively expensive overhaul. That makes them super risky to own if your one tenant decides to leave.
All right, let's zoom in a little bit, from the type of building to the actual blueprint. There are a few key design terms that you'll hear over and over, so let's do a quick vocabulary round so you're totally up to speed.
First on the list is clear height. This is the usable vertical space you have inside a building from the floor all the way up to the lowest hanging thing like a beam or a sprinkler. For a warehouse, more clear height means you can stack products higher and higher, which maximizes your storage. For a factory, it means you have room for taller equipment. In this business, height is definitely money.
Next up is floor load. This is all about raw strength. So a floor has to support its own weight, right? That's called the dead load. But what's really important is the live load. That's everything else you pile on top of it. People, super heavy machinery, and literally tons and tons of product. That floor has to be engineered to handle an unbelievable amount of pressure.
And of course, you can't talk about industrial buildings without talking about the loading dock. This is the true heartbeat of any distribution or manufacturing facility. It's where all the goods flow in and out all day long. They can be raised up to be level with a truck trailer, or they can be right at ground level so a forklift can just drive right on in.
So, now that we know what's going on inside these buildings, let's pull the camera back a bit and see where they actually live. They're usually not just standalone buildings out in the middle of nowhere. Nope, they're often part of a much bigger, planned community.
And that brings us to the industrial park. Think of it like a planned suburb, but just for businesses.
It's a specific area that's zoned just for industry, and it comes with all the infrastructure ready to go. The roads, the power, the water, all of it. The whole design is intentional, meant to keep industrial activity efficient and contained, and to act as a buffer to any nearby neighborhoods.
And if you drive through one of these parks today, you are going to see one type of construction that completely dominates everything else. Pre-engineered steel buildings have become the absolute go-to choice, and it's for three really simple reasons. They go up fast, they're cost-effective, and they are incredibly durable.
The whole process is just brilliantly simple. First, the owner designs exactly what they need: size, shape, features, the whole shebang. Second, every single part is manufactured to precise specs in a factory. And third, all those pieces are shipped to the site and just bolted together, kind of like a giant high-tech Lego set. It's a total game changer for efficiency.
And that brings us right to the end of our tour. We've seen how this hidden world is organized, how it's designed, and how it gets built. But all of this leads to one really fascinating question for the future. As technology, e-commerce, drones, and AI keep changing what we buy and how we get it, what will the warehouse of the future even look like? What will the industrial backbone of tomorrow be made of? Now that's something to think about. Thanks for joining me.